Let's pay a visit to Mark's True Crime Corner.
This is not a good neighborhood. I'm scared.
Now, here's your host, Mark Thompson.
For my better half, she's
Hi.
Courtney, everybody. Courtney is the queen of true crime in
this house.
In this house, certainly. But I was going to make the
You're
point.
going to make it bigger. Yeah.
And I hope you can hear Courtney okay. Of course, Tony, you would speak to me about any kind of level inconsistency. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
It's interesting that the hit that is this new Netflix film, Hitman, is based, and it's about a fake hitman who becomes embroiled, I don't want to give away too much, broiled in something, I'll just say. It's really good. We really enjoyed it. It's, wouldn't you say it's kind of a rom-com-ish kind of?
Yeah, it's inspired by a true story. It's got a bit of noir, and it's a rom-com. And the rom-com component was created by the screenwriters, which is Richard Linklater and then Glenn Powell, who stars in it. And what you're looking at right now actually is Richard Linklater in the background, and then Glenn Powell and his co-star in the forefront of that picture.
Yeah,
but
so that's the director there in
yeah.
the center, Richard Linklater, and the two stars are there in the foreground.
And this story was first published in Texas Monthly in 2001 when Glenn Powell was like 14. And Richard Linklater was actually friends with the author, Skip Hollandsworth. And Skip called Richard Linklater. He's like, there's this incredible story about a hitman that I've been hearing about who's in Houston, who's being hired to off everyone from jilted spouses to frustrated angry coworkers, probably a better descriptor of that. And at the time, Skip says that Richard wasn't sure about the story and kind of sat on it. And then during the pandemic, Glenn Powell called him and said, this is an incredible story and we've got to make it. And so they started to write the film. The film actually wasn't, it didn't have any studio money. So it was shot on spec.
That
but they
I think
believed
is a
so much in the project.
Great little, additional note on this film.
Yeah.
The other thing, additional note, and then you can get into the actual story of the real hitman, the real fake hitman who it's based on. But the other thing that's interesting is Glenn Powell himself. He is a very hot actor. Some would say he's right there behind Tom Cruise now in Hollywood in terms of desirability in a project. But his start was really interesting. He came to Hollywood and was in the home, staying in like the pool house, I think, of a major producer or agent. And so he had a lot of stuff going for him, but he was really young. I think he was a teenager at the time, or he was coming here to be an actor, and 18 or something. And they left town, and he had a party at their house.
I didn't know the story.
And they trashed, were in the process of trashing the house. The party goers were, but their daughter, the producer or agent, whoever it was, big power broker in Hollywood's daughter, came home. She also lived in the house, and she was outraged on behalf of her parents. And she said, get everybody out of here, you get out of here, meaning Glenn Powell.
Yeah.
You're done, and you're never going to work in this town. We're going to make sure you're through. And he thought, I really won't work in this town again. I've just angered two of the most powerful people in Hollywood. And so he was bounced out of there. And he admits, he said, it was the stupidest thing. I can't believe I did it, etc. But now his rebirth, and he's hot as an actor, and he co-wrote this very hot project called Hitman.
Yeah, and it's funny you said Tom Cruise, because I know him from Top Gun, the latest Top Gun film. And for me, that was where his breakout role was. But he definitely predates that by quite a bit.
Yeah, no, but he was in he was in that. I think they talk about him and Timothée Chalamet.
Timothée.
Oh,
Mark.
Timothée. Sorry. Yeah. Timothée in the same breath. Right. So anyway, back to Hitman. Tell us about.
Okay, so the story is about a man named Gary Johnson. And Gary Johnson was, I don't know how to say this, kind of like an ordinary guy, right? or somewhat ordinary looking. He was slightly tall. This is Skip Hollandsworth, if you're watching, the man that actually wrote the article, and was approached by investigators in and around Houston saying, there's a guy named Gary Johnson. You wouldn't know it, but he is moonlighting as a hitman in and around the Houston area. And this started, I think, in 1989. And he was working for the DA. And so, but what
So when you
his
say he's
real
moonlighting
job,
as a hitman, he was moonlighting as a fake hitman.
as a fake hitman.
Okay.
So his real job was he was a professor at a community college. He was a huge fan of meditation, Carl Jung. He was very, very sort of peaceful and kind of cool is how you might describe him. He lived alone with 2 cats in a suburb of Houston. And yeah.
So his persona as a hitman was more than a day's drive from what he actually was.
Exactly. And so he lived alone in this house. He had 2 cats. I think the cats' names were Id and Ethos, but he lived a fairly what you might consider typical life. But he was working for the DA, and he had this incredible ability to transform himself into different personas that people would then hire to off various people in their lives who they felt their life would be better without. He had a little black phone by the side of his bed, like a bat phone, like your burner phone, Mark.
Yeah.
And that phone would ring, and he would get up and he would go off to whatever solicitation he would answer to for the person who was looking to hire a hitman. Now, Mark and I had this question the whole time because it was kind of answered, but not really, on like, how do you get a hold of a hitman, right? How do you... What is that first?
It's like hitman.com.
Step in the
right. Yeah.
I think there's a dark web, but you know, this is 1989. So, but it was a lot of informants that would go to the police and mention that someone was looking to hire a hitman. And so Gary Johnson would be sent out, and he would carry through a conversation with that person. And ultimately, that person had to do 2 things. They had to clearly articulate what they wanted Gary Johnson to do in murdering whoever they were hiring him to murder. And they had to hand him some kind of compensation for that. And actually, in the film, they do feature something that happened in real life to Gary Johnson, which is someone offered him a speedboat as down payment for a murder because she doesn't have the cash, but she has this $6,000 speedboat next to her RV. So
this is
figure.
John says they embellished him somewhat in the film.
Yeah.
You wonder how much was real and how much was exaggeration. Well, Courtney's kind of getting into that right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but some of those specifics, like the speedboat thing, is part of the real. I mean, it really did
They were
happen.
part of the real. Yeah. And so if you go down, there's like so he would be sent out, and he would generally meet people in like coffee shops or hotel rooms, motel rooms, and they would carry it out. He'd be wired. I think there's actually a little bit of audio of his voice in one of these pieces. But if you go down, it'll show you kind of like an overview of who Gary was. And so I think it was 70 cases that he had meetings with these people, and there were about 70 arrests. And as I mentioned, it started in 1989. The original article was written in 2001. But he was just like the quote, the chillest dude imaginable.
So you are seeing all of these different personalities right now, or profiles of the same guy, of Gary.
Yeah, and this is a screen grab from the Netflix film. So you'll see parenthetical at the right bottom. They say like, we made this up because you know, any sort of murders attributed to him in the film is all made up.
Yeah, he never murdered anybody.
And it's really, in many ways, and this is true to the article and true to the film, is this look at our personalities, and are we who we want to be, and are we living the life we want to live, and do we have these secret interests or urges? And also it's up against the backdrop of, in the film, he is he teaches psychology. He's a professor in the film and teaches psychology, and so it is an analysis of that as well.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, because that was a key part of the film, and kind of a fun part of the film, that he's teaching this class, and in front of his students, he's discussing this very thing, that the person that we represent may not be the person that we really are in total. It's just that person or role that we feel is best for that situation, even among friends.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
But in this case, he really takes on these roles that are, far from what he's actually like. And
costumes, accents. Yeah, really.
he kind of relishes it,
And in many of these cases, he would come to the scene of wherever he was meeting the suspect dressed in the way that he thought that they would want him to be dressed. So if it was a woman in an upscale neighborhood hiring him to off her wealthy husband, he would show up in a 3-piece suit with a briefcase. So he really took on those roles and played into that, mostly to match the expectations of the suspect, to really fit into what they had imagined in their mind of what this experience would be. So, but it's a really, I liked the film. I mean, it's fairly true up into a certain point, and Richard Linklater talks about this. But certainly the romantic comedy component is not real. He did, the real fake hitman, Gary Johnson, he did meet a woman who was hiring him to off, I think it was her boyfriend, not her husband. But she was in an abusive relationship. And so he helps her go to social services instead of having her arrested.
Wow.
And
That's real?
Yes.
Oh,
a lot
my
of the
God.
inspiration for what then the movie, to the point that
takes it to a different place.
Viewer, takes it to a different place.
Wow,
So,
that's really interesting. I didn't know that.
We were really, it was really interesting because you one of those, you think you know someone,
Yeah.
but this guy certainly was living a second life that was very different from the one that he was living, somewhat externally. And when people asked him what he did, he said he worked in human resources, which I think is very funny. So that is a true
and this is
story of
interesting.
Gary Johnson.
Phineas says, Mark needs to interview a real, not fake hitman. The reality is there are no real hitmen in the sense that we think of hitmen. That was something that was actually touched on in the movie.
Richard Linklater also talks about that. And there's a line in the film about that, which they say retail hitman. So there are hitmen in potentially gangs
in
and
the mob,
mobs
yeah.
and that, but that there would be a retail hitman is kind of outlandish. I was reading somewhere where like a hitman might cost anywhere from $600 to $200,000. I'm like, what do you get for $600?
For $600, you got
Joe Box and Little Anthony.
Yeah, you get Joe
Sure what
Box
you
and Little
get.
Anthony. You get Mo Black's brother.
Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy.
Yeah.
But so that was also an interesting component.
Phineas also suggesting that Vicky in Sausalito would make a great hit woman, apparently. I did not realize that Vicky I always associate with all goodness and niceness. I don't think she's actually going to be a hit woman.
Oh, I don't know Vicky, but does she have 2 cats and live alone?
Well, it may be. She has she has the start of it. Fake, Mark has a burner phone, Beth says?
He does. Mark has a burner phone.
I do not have a burner phone. I wish I had a burner phone. Believe me.
Why does Mark have a burner phone? This piqued my interest the moment you said it. Are you
I
calling
don't-
secret people? Is that your porn phone? Like, what are you doing?
I wish I had the secret life. I wish I had everything. I don't.
Oh, I know.
I give myself to you kids on this show. I do and do and do for you kids. But no, I do not have a burner phone. It was really a fun
movie. And it's an interesting story, and so we wanted to talk about it today.
Sheila says, Sheila's True Crime Chat.
Oh, hi, Sheila.
She says, hi, Courtney. I'm taking a break from the Karen Reed trial to watch you right now.
Thank you.
Oh, that's very cool.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
A lot to unpack there still, but yeah, we really liked the film, and we thought it was a very interesting story, so wanted to talk about it today. I think it's the number 1 on Netflix, and certainly Texas Monthly's never seen so much traffic.
That's right. That was the original piece.
They're
Really.
definitely monetizing on that. So,
Gotta love it.
Yeah.
Really love it.
And
So
he died. Gary Johnson died. He died in 2022, before the film was released, actually. And Richard Linklater talks about calling Gary and saying, yeah, we're going to make it. The film's going to make it. It's all about you. And I guess Gary Johnson was just kind of like, yeah, cool.
wow.
So
He just didn't
unaffected
really-
by
yeah.
Hollywood and what it meant to be featured in a Richard Linklater film. But yeah. And this
Good
is
stuff.
a screen grab from the film, so there's a dedication to
They
him at the end
dedicated
of
it
the
to
film.
him at the end. But again, and I love that you mentioned this in setting up the film. They couldn't get the movie made. They couldn't get anybody to finance it. So they financed it themselves, essentially. And it's terrific. They're great performances. I really recommend it.
Yeah.
And really special. And I love that it's fake hitman who is at the center of things. You know what I mean? I think there have been a lot of those there. He's a secret agent, but his family doesn't know about it, or he's a hitman, but he's got to keep it from his, wife or whatever it is. This is perhaps because it is based on a true story. This just has a charm to it that I like, and it also has a kind of quality. I mean, it's, as you say, it's noirish in its own way.
It's definitely layered and well written, and it's surprising, and you can't anticipate what's going to happen. I was listening to these guys reviewing the film, and their biggest issue with the film is that Glenn Powell is so good looking that it's impossible for them to make him look like a nerd.
They did a pretty good job, but then eventually his good lookingness came out. Yeah.
Like that was the least believable part of this film.
Tom says he got a standing ovation at Sundance. I wasn't aware of that. That's really cool.
That's neat. Yeah.
Well, this has been fun, Courtney. Thank you for
having me.
Yeah, really always enjoy your contributions to the show.
Thank you. Not enough to rename True Crime Corner, but
well, I'll tell you why I don't put your name on it, because I can't count on everybody being here all the time. So we have your name featured prominently.
No, this is great.
It's everybody's always got a problem with something. That's True Crime Corner for today.
True Crime Corner, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.